Billionaire's daughter pretends to be a maid in a rich man's house to find real love. Now let me ask you something simple. If you grew up with everything, the best schools, the biggest house, cars that cost more than most people's entire lives, a father who built a billion-dollar empire from the ground up, would you trust that the person who falls in love with you actually loves you? Or would you always wonder, do they love me? Or do they love what comes with me? This girl had that exact question sitting in her chest every single day. She was not just rich. She was the daughter of a man who started as a hungry orphan boy with no school, no family, no name that anyone cared about, and who built one of the most powerful business empires in the country through sheer force of will, one deal at a time. Her father was the kind of man who people wrote books about, the kind of man who changed rooms when he walked into them. And she was his only daughter, which meant that every person who smiled at her, every man who looked at her twice, every friend who wanted to get close, she always had to ask herself the same question. Is this real, or is this just the money talking? So she made a plan. She changed her clothes. She changed her hair. She changed everything about the way she looked and presented herself to the world. And she walked into the house of a wealthy young man, a rising star, a stock market genius, someone she had met at university, and she applied for a job as his family's maid. Not because she needed the money, because she needed the truth. She wanted to see how he treated people who had nothing. She wanted to see who he was when he thought she was nobody. She wanted to know whether the man she was considering giving her heart to was genuinely good, or just good at performing goodness for people who mattered. What happened inside that house is going to surprise you. What he did when he found out the truth is going to make you laugh out loud. And what happened between them in the last days of university, in front of every single student, is the kind of ending that you will remember for a very long time. But before we get there, before the disguise, before the rejection, before the tears and the laughter and the ring, you need to understand where both of them came from. You need to understand the orphan boy who had nothing and built everything. You need to understand the daughter he raised. And you need to understand the young man in the mansion, who he was, how his family built their wealth, and why a girl who could have had anyone in the world chose to test him. This story starts with a hungry child sleeping on a cold floor. And it ends on a university stage with every student watching. Stay right here, all of it is coming. Like this video right now, because if you believe that real love is worth testing for, this story is exactly yours. Subscribe to Tribal Tales Hub and hit that bell. We bring you a new story every single week. Don't miss a single one. Drop a comment right now. Would you ever test someone the way she tested him? Tell us honestly. His name was Emeka. Just Emeka. No last name that meant anything to him. No family name that carried weight or history or a lineage he could trace back to someone who had built something before him. Just Emeka, which was the name the woman at the church shelter had given him when he arrived there at approximately 4 years old alone, without any paperwork or identification or explanation of where he had come from. He did not know what happened to his parents. This was the truth he lived with from the beginning, the foundational uncertainty of his life. There were stories. The woman at the shelter had heard from someone who had heard from someone that there had been a car accident on the road between two towns, a terrible one, and that a child had been found nearby by a passing truck driver who had brought him to the church. There was another version that said it was flooding, the kind of flooding that came in certain years when the rain came too hard and too fast, and the rivers swallowed the roads. There was a third version that nobody spoke out loud because it was too cruel to say to a child, which was simply that perhaps nobody knew, and perhaps nobody would ever know. Emeka decided, early on, that the not knowing was not going to be the most important thing about him. He made this decision when he was 7. Not in those words, he was 7, and the words he had were simple, But the decision was made clearly. He was not going to spend his life waiting to find out where he had come from. He was going to figure out where he was going. The shelter was run by a kind woman named Sister Agnes. She was not a nun. She had no formal religious title, but everyone called her Sister Agnes because she had the specific quality of someone who gave without keeping account, and the word sister felt right for that quality. She fed the children who came through, clothed them when clothing was available, and ran a small informal school in the main room of the shelter on weekday mornings, where she taught the basics of reading and numbers to anyone who showed up. Emeka showed up every morning. Not all the children did. Some of them had found ways to make small amounts of money outside and prioritized the money over the school. Some of them were not interested. Some of them had been living rough for long enough that sitting in a room at a table felt wrong. Emeka came every morning and sat in the same chair and paid attention in a way that Sister Agnes noticed in her first week with him. She noticed it because of the questions he asked. Most children, when they learned something in the morning session, absorbed it or didn't and moved on. Emeka absorbed it and then asked what it connected to. He learned to add numbers and immediately asked how adding numbers was used by the people in the market. He learned to read simple sentences and asked how you got to reading the newspapers that the older men had outside the coffee shop across the road. He learned fractions and asked how they related to the prices on goods. He was not asking these questions to be clever. He was asking them because he genuinely needed to understand the connection between the small thing being taught and the large world he was trying to figure out. Sister Agnes began spending extra time with him. He did odd jobs from the age of 8. This was not unusual in the environment he was growing up in. Many children worked, and the work was not categorized or organized. It was simply what was available. He carried bags at the market. He washed vehicles for people at the taxi rank. He ran errands for the shopkeepers along the main road. He swept the entrance to a restaurant every morning before school in exchange for a small meal. He was not building wealth. He was feeding himself, but he was also observing. Every job was a lesson. When he carried bags at the market, he learned who came to buy what and when, and how they decided what was good value and what was not. When he washed vehicles, he learned what people's cars said about them, not just the obvious money, but the specific choices people made, what they prioritized, how they valued different things. When he ran errands, he learned the geography of the commercial district, which shops were thriving and which were dying and why. At 12, he had an insight that felt bigger than anything he had thought before. He was sweeping outside the restaurant on a Tuesday morning. It was early. The main road was still quiet, and a car pulled up at the end of the road, a very large car, black, clean in the specific way of things that are maintained by people paid specifically to maintain them. It sat for a moment while the driver spoke to someone through the window. Then it pulled away. But in the moment it was there, a man stepped out of the back door briefly to take a call on his phone. He was in his 40s, well-dressed, the specific posture of someone who was used to rooms organizing themselves around his presence. He spoke on the phone for 2 minutes, got back in the car, and it drove away. Emeka stood with his broom and watched the car until it disappeared. He thought, that man does not sweep. That man does not carry bags. That man does not wash vehicles. That man has built something that makes other things happen on his behalf. He thought, I want to understand how you build that. Not the car, not the clothes, the how. The specific mechanism by which you moved from doing things yourself for small money to building systems that generated large money. He began asking different questions from that morning. Not just what and how, but why. Why did some businesses grow and others didn't? Why did some people accumulate and others, working just as hard, just as long, did not? What was the difference? He did not have access to business books. He did not have a mentor. He had the observation of a boy who paid close attention and the brain of someone who was always connecting what he saw today to what he had seen before. He was 15 when he first walked through the shopping mall. It was not a grand mall. It was the biggest commercial complex in that city, which was not a world-class mall by any standard, but it was impressive to a boy who had grown up at a market and a shelter and restaurant entrances. Multiple floors, multiple shops, air conditioning, floors that shone. He had come with a delivery, a package for a shop on the second floor, arranged by one of the street traders he ran errands for occasionally. He made the delivery and then, instead of leaving immediately, he walked. He walked through every floor. He looked at everything, not at the products, at the system, who was serving whom, how the shops were positioned, which had the longest queues, which seemed empty, how the staff behaved differently when an ordinary customer came versus when someone who appeared wealthy came. He saw it happen in real time. A man arrived. He was in his early 50s. Well-dressed, not flashily, but with the specific quality of someone whose clothes were chosen by someone who understood exactly what each detail communicated. He walked into the first floor, and within 30 seconds 3 different shop owners were at their doors. Offers of service, gifts brought to the door, the particular performance of welcome that was reserved for people who spent serious money. Outside, through the main glass doors, Emeka could see the man's vehicles, 3 of them different types, with staff positioned near each one. The cars were different from the clean black car he had seen on the road 3 years before, but they had the same quality, that specific maintenance, that specific readiness. The man bought things. He moved from shop to shop with an ease that communicated that price was not something he thought about during the transaction. He looked at things and decided, and the transaction happened without friction. Emeka watched all of this from the side. He was 15 years old, in clothes that were clean but worn, a small delivery bag in his hand. Nobody in that mall was looking at him. Nobody was coming to their door when he passed. He was invisible to this specific room in the specific way that wealth makes its absence visible. When the man's shopping was done, he walked toward the main doors. His staff outside saw him coming, and the vehicles arranged themselves. Emeka made a decision. He moved to intercept. Not confrontationally, he stepped into the man's path far enough ahead that it would be natural rather than sudden. He said, "Sir." The man's 2 nearest security people moved. They were polite but physical. There was suddenly a body between Emeka and the man. "Let him speak," the man said. He had been watching Emeka since the second floor. He had noticed the boy with the delivery bag who had not left but had been observing. In 40-odd years of building things from nothing, he had developed a specific sensor for a certain type of attention. The attention that was not admiring or envious but was analyzing. This boy had been analyzing. "What do you want?" the man said, not unkindly. "I want to know how you built this," Emeka said. He gestured not at the cars or the clothes but at the man himself, the whole picture, the system, not the money, how you got to the position where money is not the question. The man looked at him. "How old are you?" he said. 15, Emeka said. "Where do you live?" "Shelter on Ekindeo Road," Emeka said. Without embarrassment, it was a fact. "What's your name?" "Emeka." "Last name?" "Just Emeka," he said. The man reached into his jacket pocket and took out a card. He held it out. Emeka took it. "My name is Chief Solomon Ademi," the man said. "Tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, my office address is on that card. If you come, I will give you 30 minutes. Emeka looked at the card. "I don't want a job," he said. "I know," Chief Solomon said. "I'm not offering you one." He walked to his car. Emeka stood with the card. He went to Sister Agnes that evening and showed her the card. She read it. Her face did something complicated. "Do you know who this man is?" she said. "No," Emeka said. She told him. Chief Solomon Ademi was one of the most successful businessmen in the country. Information technology, real estate, 5 shopping malls in 3 cities, a portfolio of startup investments in Lagos, Abuja, and internationally. He had started from a family that was modestly middle class, not poor but not wealthy, and had built from there through a series of decisions that people wrote about and studied. He had been profiled in every major business publication. He did not usually give his card to 15-year-old boys he met in shopping malls. Emeka slept 3 hours that night. He was at the address at 8:30. He waited outside until 9 and then went in. The office building was the most beautiful building he had ever been inside. Not beautiful in the way of ornamentation, though everything was well chosen and well maintained. Beautiful in the way of function. Every element served its purpose perfectly. The lobby was large and quiet and organized. The reception staff were precise and warm. The floors shone the way the mall floors shone, but more so, as if they had been given more serious attention. He was taken to Chief Solomon's office on the executive floor. The view from the office window was of the whole city. Chief Solomon was at his desk. He gestured to the chair across from him. Emeka sat. "You said yesterday you didn't want a job," Chief Solomon said. "Tell me what you want." Emeka had been thinking about this for 16 hours. "I want to understand the mechanism," he said. "The actual mechanism by which the people who have built what you have built made the specific decisions they made. I want to understand it completely enough to replicate it." Chief Solomon looked at him. "You said you live at a shelter," he said. "Yes," Emeka said. "You have no family." "Correct. How are you currently feeding yourself?" Emeka listed the jobs, the market, the vehicles, the restaurant, the errands. He listed them plainly, without self-pity and without performance of hardship. Chief Solomon listened to all of it. Then he said, "You cannot learn the mechanism without understanding sales. Sales is the foundation. Everything else is built on top of it. Without sales, none of the rest exists." "Okay," Emeka said. "I am going to put you in my sales team," Chief Solomon said. "Entry level. You will learn from the ground. Every skill, every technique, every system. You will work as hard as anyone in that team, and I will pay you the same as anyone at your level." Emeka said, "And school?" "School also," Chief Solomon said. "I will enroll you in the school near this office. Your schedule will be school until 2, work from 3 until 7, Monday through Saturday." Emeka looked at him. "Why?" he said, the direct question, not the polite question, the actual question. Chief Solomon was quiet for a moment. "Because I can see something in you," he said. "And I have been building businesses for long enough to know that the thing I can see is rare, and rare things should not be wasted on inadequate circumstances." A long silence. "Where would I live?" Emeka said. "My house has more rooms than we use," Chief Solomon said simply. This was how it began. Chief Solomon Adami's house was not a house. Calling it a house was the way you might call the ocean a large pond, technically in the right category, but missing the essential point. It was a compound on an elevated piece of land at the edge of the city that overlooked everything else. The main building had 16 rooms. There was a separate guest wing, a rooftop garden with the specific quality of a space that had been designed by someone who understood that a garden on a rooftop needed to do different things from a garden on the ground. A gymnasium, a swimming pool that was always the exact right temperature because someone maintained it to be that way. Animals, not farm animals, birds mostly, the spectacular kind, kept in a large enclosure that was more like a habitat than a cage. An aviary full of species that Emeka had never seen before and whose colors he spent his first 2 evenings trying to absorb. The staff maintained all of this with a quiet efficiency that Emeka studied the same way he studied everything, as a system. Who did what when, how the schedule worked, how problems were reported and resolved, how the house functioned as an organism. He had a room on the east side of the guest wing. It had a view of the garden, and beyond it, the beginning of the city. The bed was the most comfortable thing he had ever slept in. He lay in it on the first night and looked at the ceiling and felt something he had not felt before, something that was not happiness exactly, but was the specific quality of a person who has been cold for a very long time and has just stepped into warmth, not the relaxation of someone comfortable. The almost shock of someone whose body is remembering that warmth is possible. He called Sister Agnes from the room phone. "Are you all right?" she said immediately. "Yes," he said. "Tell me," she said. He described the room, the view, the ceiling, the bed. She was quiet for a moment. "You called me before you slept," she said. "I always will," he said. She made a sound that he recognized. The sound she made when something was too large for her to hold without it showing on her face. "Sleep," she said. "Go to sleep, Emeka." He slept. School started on Monday. The school near the office, a private secondary school, properly funded, with proper resources and proper teaching. He was enrolled in the correct year for his age, though he had significant gaps from the informal education at the shelter. The administration was told this. A tutoring schedule was arranged for the first month to bring him level. He sat in his first proper classroom at 15 years old and looked at the blackboard and the organized desks and the teacher who had a specific qualification for teaching this specific subject. And he felt the particular combination of excitement and something like grief that comes when you understand exactly what you have been missing and are receiving it finally. He worked, not the way children who have grown up in this environment work, with the comfort of someone for whom school is the expected condition of life. He worked the way someone works when they understand that this specific thing will not come again if wasted. He read everything twice. He asked questions after class. He connected what he learned in school to what he was learning in the sales team at Chief Solomon's company. When his economics class taught supply and demand, he came to the afternoon work session with questions about how the company's pricing strategy related to the theory. The sales manager, a woman named Mrs. Oak who was in her late 30s and who had been with Chief Solomon's company for 11 years, had never had a trainee who came to her with questions derived from economics class. "You are combining everything," she said, one Friday afternoon when Emeka had asked a particularly integrative question. "Isn't that what you're supposed to do?" he said. She looked at him. "It's what you're supposed to do," she said. "Most people don't." Now, the house also contained Chief Solomon's daughter. Her name was Amara Ademi. She was 14, a year younger than Emeka, and she had grown up in this house the way people who grow up in exceptional circumstances grow up, with the exceptional as the baseline. The birds in the aviary were simply birds. The swimming pool was simply where you swam. The view from the rooftop garden was simply the view. She did not experience these things as luxuries because she had never experienced their absence. She was not a bad person. This needed to be said early, before the friction became visible. She was not cruel or spoiled in the deep sense. She was a young girl who had been raised in extraordinary comfort with a father who was frequently absent for business and a mother who had died when Amara was 7, a fact that sat in the house like a permanent weather condition, present always but not always acknowledged. What she was when Emeka arrived was territorial. This was her house. This was her father. This was the specific shape of her life, and it was already complicated enough by the absence of her mother without a 15-year-old boy showing up with a delivery bag and being given the best room in the guest wing and enrolled in her school and eating dinner at the same table as her father. She complained. Not constantly, not dramatically, but regularly enough and precisely enough to make her position clear. "Why does he need to live here?" she said to her father 3 days after Emeka arrived. They were at dinner. Emeka was at the table. The question was not whispered. Chief Solomon put down his fork. "He lives here because I invited him to live here," he said. "We don't know him," Amara said. "I know him well enough," her father said. "You met him 3 days ago." Amara, Chief Solomon said. His voice did not rise. It became more precise, which was more effective. I am going to tell you something, and I want you to listen to it carefully. I have been building businesses for 30 years. I have met tens of thousands of people. I know within 5 minutes the difference between someone who has something real and someone who does not. Emeka has something real, something I have not seen in someone his age in all 30 of those years. I am not going to explain this decision to you, but I am going to ask you to respect it. Amara looked at him. Then she looked at Emeka. Emeka was looking at his food. He had heard everything. He did not react to it. This was one of the things Chief Solomon would later identify as the most specific piece of evidence that he had been right about the boy, that at 15, in a situation designed to produce defensive or aggressive response, Emeka simply continued eating with the composure of someone who understood that reacting to every difficulty was a waste of energy. Amara said nothing more at the dinner, but she looked at Emeka with the specific look of a person who has not yet decided what they think about you and is keeping all options open. They went to the same school. This created a particular social complexity. Amara had been at the school since she was 10. She had her established group, her social position, the specific currency of someone whose father was Chief Solomon Ademi and who had grown up in the house on the hill. Emeka arrived as someone new, not from nothing exactly, because he had arrived in Chief Solomon's car and had the association that implied, but clearly different from everyone else in the school, in ways that his manner and his clothing and his manner of carrying himself communicated. The school noticed him, not universally positively. He was not a person who sought social approval. This was disorienting for people who were used to new arrivals trying to fit in. He sat where he needed to sit. He spoke to who he needed to speak to. He was polite but not performing politeness. He was interested in his subjects but not performing interest. He was himself in a completely unself-conscious way that some people found confusing and some people found compelling. Amara watched him from across the school compound for the first 3 months. She did not approach him. She did not include him in her group. She was not specifically unkind. She did not exclude him aggressively or make the social mechanics difficult. She simply maintained her distance with the neutrality of someone who has not yet moved off the waiting position. What changed? It was a Tuesday afternoon in November. Emeka had stayed after school to finish something in the library. He came out at 5 to find a group of older boys from the neighboring school at the gate, 3 of them, bored and looking for something to do with the energy that bored teenage boys sometimes find at closing time. They had stopped 2 younger students from his school and were doing the specific low-level intimidation of people who want to feel powerful at other people's expense. Amara was one of the 2 students. She was not frightened. She was the daughter of Chief Solomon Ademi, and fear was not her primary mode. But she was alone except for a classmate who was clearly very frightened, and the 3 boys at the gate were big enough and persistent enough to make the situation uncomfortable. Emeka came out of the library, assessed the situation in approximately 2 seconds, walked to the gate, and stood beside Amara. He did not threaten the boys. He did not perform courage or make himself large. He simply stood there with the specific quality of someone who has been in genuinely difficult situations since he was 8 years old, and for whom this particular configuration of difficulty was not remotely close to the worst he had navigated. He said to the lead boy, "Is there a specific reason you're standing here, or is this just how you chose to use this afternoon?" The question was said pleasantly, completely pleasantly, with no aggression and no performance of aggression. Just a direct, calm question from someone who was obviously not impressed or threatened. The lead boy looked at him. Something in the assessment of each other that happens in these moments happened. The boy understood something from Emeka's face, not that he was physically superior or that there would be violence. He understood that this person was not going to perform the expected responses, and that made the situation much less interesting. They left. Amara watched them go. Then she looked at Emeka. "Thank you," she said. It came out slightly stiffly. She was not practiced at gratitude toward him. "I was going this direction anyway," he said, and walked toward the car that was waiting. She stood for a moment looking at his back. Then she followed. In the car, she said, "How were you not scared?" He looked at her. "Of those boys," he said. "They were older," she said. "When I was 9 years old," he said, "I was carrying bags in the main market and 3 men who were drunk tried to take the money I had made that day. I was 9. Those boys today were 16. She was quiet for a moment. "What did you do when you were 9? She said. "I ran," he said, "but I only had to run once. After that, I understood how to read the situation before it became one." She was quiet for the rest of the car ride. But after that, she stopped maintaining the distance. The friendship, because that was what it became, slowly and without announcement, was built the way real friendships are built. Not through a single moment, but through accumulated small ones. Through the specific gradual learning of who someone actually is, which takes time and cannot be rushed. She found out he was up at 5:30 every morning to study. She started coming to the kitchen at 6, where he was already working through the previous day's school material before the day began. They drank tea, and he explained what he was studying, and she asked questions, and he answered, and she occasionally corrected his approach, and he accepted the correction immediately, without ego, and adjusted. She found out he was sending a portion of his work income to Sister Agnes every month, not because she had asked or because he needed to, because Sister Agnes had given him the only stability he had known, and this was how he expressed gratitude. He did not talk about this. She found it out from Mrs. Adami, the housekeeper who managed the household accounts and who had noticed the transfers. She found out he was tracking the company's performance metrics in his own notebook, not for any task he had been assigned, but because he wanted to understand how the business was actually doing at the structural level, and the management reports that circulated at his level were not detailed enough for the questions he was asking himself. She found out, essentially, who he was. And who he was someone unlike anyone she had met in the school or in the social world of the house on the hill, or in any space her life had previously given her access to. She told her father, "I understand why you brought him here." Her father looked at her over his reading glasses. "What changed?" he said. "I actually looked," she said. He nodded, once, the way Chief Solomon nodded when something had arrived at the right place. 2 years passed. Emeka became good at sales. Not just competent, genuinely good, in the way that required the specific combination of technical skill and intuitive understanding of people that made the best salespeople different from merely good ones. He understood what a client needed before the client had finished explaining. He understood which feature of a product or service was the one that would actually move this specific person's decision. He understood when to speak and when to be quiet, and when to let the silence do the work. Mrs. Oak said, in Emeka's 17th year, to Chief Solomon at a management meeting, "He is the best person I have developed in 11 years here, and I want you to know I mean that technically, not emotionally." Chief Solomon said nothing, but he adjusted the commission structure for Emeka's level upward. He also, in Emeka's 18th year, sat him down and told him the next phase. "You are going to university," he said. "I know," Emeka said. "I have been preparing for the entrance exams." "Business administration," Chief Solomon said, "with a secondary focus on finance. The company will pay your fees. You will continue on commission-based work during breaks, but the next 4 years are for building the knowledge base that you currently lack." "I know what I lack," Emeka said. "Tell me." "Formal frameworks," Emeka said. "I have developed my own ways of thinking about business problems, but I am missing the established frameworks that would let me identify when my own thinking has gaps. I need the formal vocabulary of finance and strategy." Chief Solomon looked at him. Exactly, he said. University was not a break or a reward. It was another environment to learn from. He studied with the same intensity he had brought to everything, supplemented by 3 years of real sales work and real business exposure. His professors noticed that his questions were not theoretical. They were grounded in actual business situations he had encountered. His case analysis was different from his classmates because his reference points were real rather than hypothetical. He also made money. During university, the commission income from his continued work with Chief Solomon's company, structured now as a part-time consultancy rather than a trainee role, was significant enough that by the time he was 20, he had purchased his own flat and his own car. Not extravagantly. Practically, with the specific calculation of someone who understood that every asset chosen was information about your priorities. He was 20. He had a flat, a car, a university place, a company that valued him, and a growing understanding of how to build things. He had no family. He had Sister Agnes, who he called every week. He had Chief Solomon, who was somewhere between a mentor and something he did not have a word for. And he had Amara, who was, by this point, 19 years old, in the second year of her own university studies, finance, because it turned out that the girl who had grown up in a business empire had absorbed more of it than she realized, and the university finance course felt like a vocabulary being applied to knowledge she already had. She was at the same university, and the friendship that had begun in the kitchen at 6 in the morning over tea and textbooks had not diminished with the change of environment. It had become something else. Neither of them said so directly. This was characteristic of both of them. Both were people who did not announce things before they understood them fully. Both preferred to know clearly what they thought before speaking it. But the something else was visible to everyone around them. Their study sessions ran longer than study required. Their conversations covered more ground than two old friends' conversations needed to cover. When she was not in a room, he was aware of her absence in a specific way. When Chief Solomon asked Emeka, on a holiday visit, how Amara was doing at university, and Emeka's face did the specific thing faces do when someone asks about a person who occupies more of your thinking than the question implies. Chief Solomon put down his cup and said nothing further on the subject. He did not interfere. He understood that some things needed to develop at their own pace. He was right. Hold on, because where this love story actually goes is not a straight line. Subscribe to Tribal Taile's Hub if you haven't, because the next section is where everything gets complicated and then gets extraordinary. The company commission that Emeka had been earning since he was 15 had been accumulating with the discipline of someone who understood compound growth from first principles. He graduated university at 23 with a first-class degree in business administration and a finance subsidiary. He was offered positions at 3 external companies, each of which represented a salary that would have been remarkable for someone his age. He declined all 3. He went to Chief Solomon's office instead. They sat across from each other in the same chairs where they had first sat 8 years earlier, the same view of the city from the same window. "I want to build my own thing," Emeka said. Chief Solomon looked at him. "Tell me what," he said. "I have been watching the property technology space," Emeka said. "The gap between how property transactions happen currently in this country and how they could happen with the right digital infrastructure is enormous. The trust deficit in property transactions is the main barrier to market efficiency. If you can build a platform that resolves the trust deficit, that brings transparent information, verified listings, escrow-managed transactions, you capture a market that nobody has properly addressed." He placed a document on the desk, a business plan, 62 pages. Chief Solomon opened it. He read for 15 minutes, not skimming, reading, with the specific attention of someone who was evaluating every element. He closed it. "Your capital requirements are conservative," he said. Deliberately, Emeka said. I want to prove the model before scaling. Conservative capital means the early version is about proof of concept, not growth. Once the concept is proven, growth financing is much easier to negotiate. You need a lead investor, Chief Solomon said. I know, Emeka said. You are asking me, Chief Solomon said. I am informing you, Emeka said. You will make the decision you make. I have 2 other investors who have expressed interest. I am speaking to you first because you should hear it first. Chief Solomon looked at him. 20%, Chief Solomon said, for the initial capital requirement. 5-year exit option at current valuation. 15%, Emeka said. 7-year exit. The 5-year window is too short for a property platform. The network effects take time to develop. A long silence. 16%, Chief Solomon said. 7 years. Done, Emeka said. Chief Solomon looked at him for a moment with an expression that was not quite a smile, but was in the vicinity. You just negotiated my terms down, he said. Yes, Emeka said. I was the first person who gave you a chance, Chief Solomon said. Which is why I gave you first right of refusal on the best terms I was going to offer anyone, Emeka said. 16% is lower than the other offers, but your name on the cap table and your network are worth more than 2%. Chief Solomon picked up his phone. I'll call the lawyers, he said. The company was called Prop Verify. It did exactly what Emeka had described in the business plan, a digital platform for property transactions that addressed the trust and verification gap. Verified listings, independent valuations, escrow management, a review system that built over time into the most comprehensive property market intelligence database in the country. He was the sole founder. He built the initial team from 3 people, a developer he had met through a university project, a lawyer who specialized in property transactions and who understood immediately the value of what he was building, and an operations manager from Chief Solomon's company who requested the transfer. The early months were the specific difficulty of early months, everything taking longer than projected, every problem being more complicated than anticipated, every solution creating 2 new questions. He worked 18-hour days. He slept on a couch in the office 3 nights a week. He called Sister Agnes on Sunday evenings, as he always had, and she asked if he was eating properly, and he said yes even on the evenings when he had forgotten to. But the model worked. Not in the vague sense that things were moving, in the specific, measurable sense that users were transacting on the platform and completing transactions that they would not have completed elsewhere, because the trust mechanisms were doing what they were supposed to do. Within 18 months, Prop Verify had facilitated 700 property transactions, totaling a combined value that exceeded the entire initial capital requirement by a factor of 12. The second round of funding was oversubscribed by 3 times what he needed. He took the money he needed and declined the rest. This was a decision that people in the investment community noticed. Declining money when it was offered was unusual, and the reasoning he gave, that taking more than needed diluted focus as well as equity, was the kind of reasoning that people wrote down. He was 27 when Prop Verify reached its first $1 billion in transaction value in a single month. He was 28 when he was on the cover of a Lagos business magazine with the headline, "The Orphan Who Built the Future of Nigerian Property." He called Sister Agnes the morning the magazine came out. "Have you seen it?" he said. "Someone brought it to the home this morning," she said. "I have been looking at it for an hour." "What do you think?" he said. She was quiet for a moment. "I think," she said, "that there is a 15-year-old boy somewhere who has no family and no school and no food, and who needs someone to see what I saw in you." He understood. "I will call the home's accountant today," he said. He funded a complete renovation of Sister Agnes's children's home. He funded an endowment that would sustain its operations for 20 years without depending on inconsistent donations. He established a scholarship program in his own name at the school where he had first sat in a proper classroom at 15. He also, that same year, sat across from Amara Ademi in a restaurant in Lagos and said the thing he had been not saying for 4 years. "You know what I feel," he said. "I know," she said. "I am saying it now," he said, "because I think it is the right time and because I don't believe in waiting past the right time." "The right time," she repeated. She was not mocking. She was assessing the phrase with the analytical mind she had inherited from her father. "Yes," he said, "I am a different person now than I was at university. Not different in character, different in position. I am now someone who is asking you with something to offer. I am not asking you to choose uncertainty. I am asking you to choose me." She looked at him across the table. "You think I needed you to have something to offer," she said. "No," he said, "I needed me to have something to offer." She looked at him for a long time. "I've been in love with you since I was 16, she said. "I know," he said. "You knew since 16. "Since the Tuesday I saw you watch me leave after the gate situation," he said. "The way you looked at my back." She was quiet. "That is very specific," she said. "I'm a very specific person," he said. "You are," she agreed. They were married the following year. Chief Solomon sat in the front row at the ceremony in the specific way of a man who has watched something develop over 12 years and is receiving the confirmation of everything he believed when it began. He did not cry. He was not a crying man, but his face did the thing that faces do when something is exactly right. The business continued to grow. By 32, Prop Verify operated in 4 countries. The word billionaire was being used by journalists with increasing confidence. He had homes, not just the flat he had bought at 20, but properties that reflected the specific life he was building. An island property that he visited with Amara in the months when they could get away. A house in London for the periods when international work required extended UK presence. The main house in Lagos that had become the family home. They had a daughter. She was born when both Emeka and Amara were 31. They named her Zara, a name that Amara had loved since university, a name with a quality she described as both strong and soft, which was exactly the quality they were hoping to raise. Zara Ademi Emeka arrived in the world with her father's watchful eyes and her mother's expression of focused assessment. She was 3 weeks old when she looked at Chief Solomon across a hospital room in the specific way of a newborn who is already deciding what she thinks about the situation. Chief Solomon, who was 70 by this point, looked back at her and said, "She is going to be trouble." He meant it as the highest compliment. He was right. Zara grew up in the big house. Not the house on the hill where her parents had both, in different ways, spent formative years. That house was Chief Solomon's house, and Chief Solomon was 84 now and still there, still sharp, still reading the business news every morning with the reading glasses he had finally agreed to use at 82. She grew up in the house her parents had built for themselves, large, beautiful, full of the specific thoughtfulness of people who had designed a home rather than just purchased one. The house had a gym because her father used it every morning at 5:30. It had a study with floor-to-ceiling shelves because her mother read books the way some people breathe. It had a garden because both her parents understood that a garden required tending, and both of them believed in doing things that required tending as a practice. It had a rooftop with a view of Lagos at night that Zara had known since she was old enough to be brought up there, and which remained her favorite place in the world when she needed to think. She was not a simple child, and she did not become a simple young woman. She had inherited specific things from both parents. From her father, the watchful analytical quality, the specific patience with which he observed situations before acting on them, the directness that came not from aggression but from a fundamental preference for accuracy over performance. From her mother, the social intelligence, the ability to read rooms and people and relationships quickly, the particular sharpness that comes from growing up in an environment where intelligence is expected and spoken. She was also, and this was important, spoiled in some specific ways. Not in the way of someone who had been indulged without expectation. Her parents were clear from early on that the life she was living was built on specific choices made over specific years, and that the choices that maintained it would need to be made by her eventually. She was taken to Prop Verify's offices from the age of 5. She was told, in age-appropriate language, what the company did and why it mattered. She was brought to Chief Solomon's original offices, now run by Amara, who had taken over the Adami business holdings when Chief Solomon stepped back at 81 and walked through every floor. But she was also, genuinely, growing up in a world where the specifics of financial difficulty were not part of her direct experience. She had not been hungry. She had not wondered whether school fees would be paid. She had not made decisions based on what she could or could not afford because the category of could not afford had not yet appeared in her personal life. This gave her a specific kind of confidence that was not always distinguishable from arrogance. She was both, genuinely confident because she was genuinely capable, and occasionally arrogant because capability without the specific calibration that comes from genuine difficulty sometimes presents that way. Her mother understood this. "Amara," Chief Solomon said to her once, when Zara was 16 and had been particularly difficult about something, "the detail of the instance is less important than the pattern. You were the same at 16. "I know," Amara said. "What fixed it for you?" he said. "Emeka," she said simply. He laughed, then he thought about it. "She needs someone she cannot manage," he said. "Yes," Amara said. "She needs someone who is not impressed by what she comes from." University arrived. She chose the same university her parents had attended, partly because it was genuinely excellent, and partly because she was the kind of person who liked completing circles. She enrolled in business administration, which surprised nobody. What she found there was that her parents' reputation preceded her in every room she entered. This was something she had experienced in Lagos, in her school, in the social world she had grown up in. But university made it more concentrated. In a business school where her father's company was a case study and her grandfather's business empire was cited in multiple modules, being Zara Adami Emeka meant that everyone knew who she was before she opened her mouth. She found this, depending on the day, either useful or exhausting. It was exhausting specifically in the context of the people who were interested in her. Because she was the daughter of Emeka Adami Emeka, founder of Prop Verify, the man who had built one of the most successful property technology companies on the continent. And she was the granddaughter of Chief Solomon Adami, whose name was on buildings and endowments and a chair at a Lagos business school. The combination of these two inheritances created around her a specific gravitational field. Everyone was polite. Everyone was accommodating. Everyone wanted to be her friend, her partner in group work, her study companion, the person she chose for projects. Everyone had reasons why she might want to get to know them better. And she could not tell, not reliably, which of these people were genuine. This was the problem, not a small problem. The fundamental question of a young person who has grown up with everything: is this real? She was 19, the first time she asked her father directly. He was in the study. She came in and sat across from him in the chair that was there for exactly this purpose. He had always kept a chair across from his desk for the people he wanted to be able to come to him. "How do you know?" she said. He looked up. "How do I know what?" he said. "Whether people are real," she said. "Whether what they show you is what they actually are." He put down what he was reading. "Tell me what this is actually about," he said. She told him. The university's social landscape. The specific way that her family name created an atmosphere that made everything slightly suspect. The men who were interested in her and whom she could not evaluate properly because she could not separate the person from the context. He listened to all of it. When she was done, he said, "Do you know how I confirmed your mother?" She looked at him. "I watched her at the gate when those boys wouldn't let her through," he said. "I watched how she carried herself when she thought the situation was just what it appeared to be, no one watching who mattered, no advantage in any particular response. And the person I saw then was the person I saw every day after. There was no gap between the observed version and the unobserved version." "That was one incident," she said. "Yes," he said, "but it was specific. It showed me who she was under pressure. Who people are under pressure when there is no performance benefit is who they actually are." She thought about this. "So you need the unobserved version," she said. "Yes," he said. "The challenge is finding it. Most people, when they know they're being watched by someone who matters, perform. The only way to see the real version is to observe when they don't know you're watching." She went quiet. "I'm not suggesting," he began. "I know," she said. "I'll figure it out." He watched her leave the room with the specific look of a man who knows his daughter well enough to know that she has just received a piece of information and has already begun assembling it into a plan. He thought about telling Amara. Then he thought she is her mother's daughter, and Amara would only say, "Let her figure it out." He went back to his reading. His name was Kelechi Okafor. He was 21 years old. He was in his third year of university, 1 year ahead of Zara. He was studying computer engineering with a minor in applied mathematics, which was the kind of combination that suggested both creativity and precision, and which matched his actual character. He was someone who thought in systems but built them for human purposes. His family had made their money through the stock market, not through any single dramatic event, but through the specific practice that his father, a quiet, deliberate man named Mr. Chukwuma Okafor, had developed over 25 years of patient, disciplined investment. Not speculation. Investment. The specific difference between those two words was the organizing principle of the Okafor family's financial philosophy. Buy what you understand. Hold what has genuine value. Be patient while the market catches up to what you already know. Mr. Chukwuma Okafor had started with modest capital and had compounded it over 25 years into substantial wealth. He drove a reasonable car. He lived in a large house but not an ostentatious one. He was known in investment circles as one of the sharpest long-term thinkers in the country, and he was known in his neighborhood as the quiet man who was always early to church. His wife, Mrs. Ngozi Okafor, was a pediatrician. She had maintained her medical practice through the family's financial growth because she believed, in the specific way of someone who had decided a thing clearly, that what you do matters and cannot be replaced by what you have. She was the doctor her patients called first when they were worried. She was the doctor who called her patients when their test results came back to explain the results before they could spiral into anxiety from not understanding. Both parents were, in the specific way that parents can be when they have thought about it, good. Kelechi had grown up in this house with parents who were good to each other and good to the people around them, and who expected the same from him, not as a performance for company but as a practice, because it was what you did. He was not perfect. He was 21 and had the specific 21-year-old qualities of occasional impatience and occasional overconfidence. But the foundation was sound. Zara had met him in the second semester of her first year. He was in her advanced business analytics elective. She had taken it to supplement her core curriculum. He had taken it to complement his engineering focus. They had been assigned to the same project group. She noticed him in the first group meeting because he disagreed with something she said. Not aggressively, not rudely, with the specific, grounded directness of someone who thought she was wrong and considered it useful to say so. "Your assumption about market penetration timing is off," he said. "You're treating the early adopter curve as linear. It isn't. The acceleration in the middle of the adoption curve means your month 4 projection is actually closer to what you'll see in month 7. She looked at him. "Show me," she said. He showed her, with an actual model built in the spreadsheet they were all looking at. He changed 3 variables and demonstrated how the projection shifted. She looked at the revised model for 30 seconds. "You're right," she said. The 2 other people in the group looked at each other, someone agreeing that immediately was unusual. "I know," Kelechi said, without arrogance, just as a statement of fact. He had checked it before the meeting. They worked well together. The project was excellent. The professor used it as an example in a later class, which neither of them mentioned to the other because neither of them were people who announced things like that. They became friends. The specific kind of university friendship that develops between people who are both serious about what they are doing and who find each other's seriousness a relief rather than a competition. She liked him because he did not treat her differently knowing who she was. He did not know. He knew. Everyone in the business school knew who Zara Adamiameka was. But Kelechi Okafor, who had been raised in a house where you treated people according to what they were rather than what they came from, had simply treated her as the specific person she was demonstrating herself to be. Which was competent, direct, occasionally difficult, very funny when she decided to be, and entirely uninterested in being managed. Over the first 2 years of this friendship, for it was genuinely a friendship, a real one, the kind built on actual time and actual conversation, she found herself wanting to know more. Not in the abstract, in the specific way of someone who has a question and needs an answer. She needed to see who he was in the unobserved version. The idea came to her on a Thursday evening in October of her 2nd year. She was on the rooftop of her parents' Lagos house, which she went to whenever she needed to think. The city was laid out below her. She was thinking about her father's words from 3 years before. The only way to see the real version is to observe when they don't know you're watching. She also thought about her mother's story, and her grandmother's children's home, and 100 things she had been raised on, stories of people discovering the truth about other people when the performance was stripped away. The Okafor house had recently lost their longtime housekeeper to a family in Abuja. She knew this because Kelechi had mentioned it in passing. They were looking for someone new. The process was taking time. She called her cousin Chisom, who lived in Port Harcourt and whom neither Kelechi nor his family had ever met. "I need a favor," she said. "What kind?" Chisom said. "The kind where you submit a Maid application to a family in Lagos under a name they won't recognize," Zara said. A pause. "Are you serious?" Chisom said. "Completely," Zara said. "Is this legal?" Chisom said. "Entirely," Zara said. "I am going to apply for the housekeeper position. I am going to use a different appearance and a different name. I am going to spend 2 weeks in that house and observe how they treat the people who work for them. That is all I want to do." Another pause. "And what's the goal?" Chisom said. "The goal," Zara said, "is to find out if the person I think I know is actually the person he is, or if the person I know is a performance." A very long pause. "Zara," Chisom said. "Yes." "You know this could go wrong in multiple ways," Chisom said. "I know," Zara said. "The most likely way it goes wrong is that I find out he is exactly who he appears to be, and then I have to figure out how to tell him what I did." "That sounds very bad," Chisom said. "It sounds very good actually," Zara said, "because if he is exactly who he appears to be, then the problem of explanation is a much better problem to have than the problem of having chosen someone who wasn't." Chisom was quiet. "You are so much like your grandfather," she said finally. "Is that a yes?" Zara said. "That's a yes," Chisom said. She prepared carefully. She found professional-grade hair modification, not a wig but a temporary hair color treatment, and a style change significant enough to alter the immediate recognition of her face. She bought clothes that were entirely unlike her usual wardrobe. She changed her posture and her affect not dramatically, because dramatic changes were conspicuous. Subtly, the way an actor does it, adjusting the specific details of how she moved and how she held herself. She submitted the application through her cousin's email. The interview was conducted by phone, with a voice slightly adjusted by pitch. She answered questions about previous housekeeping experience. She had researched this thoroughly and had spent a week at a friend's house in a different city practicing before the application. She was offered the position. She told her parents she was going to a friend's house in Port Harcourt for 2 weeks. She called this a study break. It was technically true that she was studying something. Her mother looked at her across the dinner table on the Thursday evening before she left. "Is everything all right?" Amara said. "Yes," Zara said. "You have that look," Amara said. "What look?" "The look your father has when he has decided something and is not telling me what it is yet," Amara said. Zara looked at her mother. "Everything is completely fine," she said. "I need 2 weeks to think." Amara looked at her for a long moment. "Call me every day," she said. "Every day," Zara said. She arrived at the Akefer house on a Monday morning. The house was large and well-maintained in the specific way of a house that had been thought about rather than just filled with expensive things. The garden was tended, not the wild luxury of her parents' garden, but something more organized, more deliberate. There were books on shelves that were clearly read rather than displayed. The kitchen was functional rather than designed. The family had clearly prioritized living in the house over presenting it. Mrs. Ngozi Akefer met her at the door. She was in her 50s, doctor's posture straight, efficient, the specific alertness of someone whose job required constant attention. She welcomed Zara with a warmth that was genuine rather than performed. She showed her the house. She explained the schedule and the duties. She showed her the room where she would stay, not luxurious, but clean and comfortable, and with a window that had a reasonable view of the garden. "If you need anything," Mrs. Akefer said, "please ask. We want you to be comfortable here." Zara looked at her. "Thank you, Ma," she said. Mr. Chukwuma Akefer came home that evening in a car that was good but not showy. He came into the kitchen where Zara was finishing the dinner preparation and said, "You are our new housekeeper. Welcome. Is the room comfortable?" "Very comfortable, sir," she said. "Good," he said. "If there is anything you need, please tell us." He went to the sitting room. These were not the responses of people performing. These were the responses of people who had been like this for long enough that it required no effort. Kelechi came home at 7. He came into the kitchen. It was clear this was his pattern, coming to the kitchen first, and stopped when he saw her. "Oh," he said, "you must be the new housekeeper. I'm Kelechi." He extended his hand. She shook it. His eyes did not linger on her. He was polite, direct, treated her exactly the same way his parents had. No performance in either direction, not the coldness of someone who considered staff beneath acknowledgement, and not the performance of someone being pointedly democratic about it. Just, "You are a person, I am a person, hello." He went to the sitting room to greet his parents. She stood in the kitchen. She thought, "This is what I came to see." The 2 weeks had a specific quality. She was doing the actual work, the housekeeping, the meals, the maintenance of the household. It was not light work, and she had a new and direct understanding of what domestic staff actually did, which was significant in itself. But she was also observing. Kelechi's pattern in the house: he came home at 7. He greeted his parents properly, not a formality, an actual conversation about their days. He ate dinner with them. He spent an hour in the evening either studying or reading. He went to bed at a reasonable time and was up early. He never left a mess for others to clean up that he could have cleaned himself. He said please and thank you to Zara with the consistency of someone for whom this was simply how you spoke to people. When she was carrying something heavy, he moved to help without being asked and without making it a comment. Once in the first week, he came into the kitchen while she was cooking and asked if he could help. "I'm fine, sir," she said. "You don't have to call me sir," he said. "Kelechi is fine." "Yes, Kelechi," she said. "Are you sure you don't need help?" he said. "There's nothing to help with," she said. "It's almost ready." "Okay," he said, and went back to the sitting room. She stood over the pot and thought, who acts like this when no performance is required? Real people, that was who. She was in her fourth day when she understood something clearly. He was exactly who he appeared to be. This was the best possible finding. It was also, as Chisholm had predicted, the beginning of the problem. Because knowing that he was exactly who he appeared to be meant that what she felt, which she had been managing and monitoring carefully for 2 years, was based on something real. And something real meant she needed to do something about it. And doing something about it meant either telling him what she had done, which was going to be a complex conversation, or not telling him, which was going to be something she couldn't live with. She decided to tell him. After the 2 weeks, she was there for 13 days when he came to her. Not in the house, in the garden. She was tending something that Mrs. Ockafer had asked her to look after near the back fence. He came out with 2 cups of tea and sat on the garden bench nearby. "Can I sit here?" he said. "Of course," she said. He sat, he handed her a cup, she accepted it. They sat in the garden for 20 minutes and talked about very little. The garden, what was growing, what the evening was like. It was one of those conversations that is entirely about the non-verbal content, where the words are not the communication. At the end of it, he said, "You remind me of someone." She looked at him. "Who?" she said carefully. "Someone I know from university," he said. "Different hair, different, I can't put my finger on it, but there is something." She was quiet. "It's probably nothing," he said, and stood up and went inside. She sat in the garden for a long time after. She called her mother. "I think I need to come home," she said. "Are you all right?" Amara said immediately. "Yes," she said, "but I think the thing I came to find out is found, and now there are other things to figure out." "Come home," Amara said. She did. The next morning, she told Mrs. Ockafer that a family situation required her to leave sooner than expected. Mrs. Ockafer was genuinely concerned and warm about it, offering assistance that Zara thanked her for and declined. She left the house. She went home. She sat with her parents and told them everything. Her father listened to all of it. When she finished, he said, "How long have you known him?" 2 years, she said. "And your conclusion about his character?" "He is exactly what he appears to be," she said. He nodded. "And what is the problem?" he said. "The problem," she said, "is that I have now been a maid in his family's house for 2 weeks, and I need to tell him that, and I don't know how that conversation goes." Her father looked at her. He had the specific expression that she recognized as the expression he wore when he was containing amusement. "I imagine," he said carefully, "that the conversation will be interesting." "Papa," she said. "Yes." "Is this what happened with you and Mama? Was there any?" "No," he said. "Your mother did not pretend to be a maid in my family's house." "I know, but—" "She just watched me walk away from 3 boys at a gate," he said, "and then watched me go to university and build something real, and then let me say what I felt when I was ready." He paused. "The watching is the same thing you did. The method was different." She thought about this. "Okay," she said. "What are you going to do?" he said. She was quiet for a long moment. "I'm going to tell him," she said. "At university, I'm going to tell him the truth and then see what he does." "And if he's angry," her father said. Then he's angry, she said. He has a right to be angry. What I'm looking for is what comes after the angry. Her father looked at her. You are your mother's daughter, he said. I know, she said. She went back to university. She avoided him for 3 days. Not obviously, she was just suddenly not available in the moments when she might have been. On the 4th day, she needed to stop avoiding because the avoidance was becoming its own thing. She found him in the library. He was at a desk with his laptop open. She sat down across from him. I need to tell you something, she said. He looked up. Okay, he said. She told him. She told him all of it, the conversation with her father, the question she had been asking herself for 2 years, the application, the preparation, the 2 weeks in his house, what she had observed, the tea in the garden. She told him without managing it too carefully, which was, for her, the most honest thing she could do. She did not soften it. She did not frame it in a way designed to get a particular response. She just said it. When she finished, the library was very quiet. He was looking at her. She looked back. You were the new housekeeper, he said. Yes, she said. You changed your hair posture affect voice slightly, she said. Yes. He was quiet. You handed me a cup of tea in my own garden, he said. You offered to help cook, she said, both times. Something moved in his face. Both times, he said. Yes, she said. He was quiet for a long time. She waited. This was the moment. What came after the processing was who he was. Then he laughed. Not a polite or managed laugh. A real, full, genuine laugh. The kind that comes from somewhere deep and surprised, and that changes the whole room. He laughed for almost 30 seconds. She looked at him. This is funny to you, she said. You were the maid, he said, for 2 weeks in my house making dinner. Yes, she said. And I didn't recognize you, he said. No, she said. He shook his head. The laughter had settled, but the expression was still entirely open. You know what I did, he said. The day after you left, I asked my mother what had happened to the new housekeeper. What did she say? Zara said. She said she had a family situation and had to leave unexpectedly, he said. And I thought that's a shame. She reminded me of someone. You said that, Zara said, in the garden. I know, he said. I almost figured it out right then. She looked at him. Are you angry? She said. He considered this honestly. She could see him doing it. No, he said. Not angry. I understand why you did it. I understand the question you were asking. And I understand, he paused. I understand that the answer you found is that I am who I appear to be. Yes, she said. Which means the question was worth asking, he said. Yes, she said. He looked at her across the library table. I have something to tell you, he said. She waited. I knew at the gate in university, he said. In the first few months, when you came out of the library and stood next to me, I knew then that you were someone I was going to want to know very well. I've been not saying that for 2 years because I wasn't certain you wanted to hear it, and because I am your friend and friendships matter. She looked at him. You've been not saying it for 2 years, she said. Yes, he said. How long have you been not saying yours? She thought about it honestly. Since the analytics class, she said, when you told me my projection was wrong. He looked at her. Because I told you you were wrong, he said. Because you were right, she said. And you just said it, without managing it, without worrying about how I would receive it. He was quiet for a moment. So we have both been not saying this for 2 years, he said. Yes, she said. A long silence. Then he stood up. He said, I want to say it now, properly, not in a library with both of us sitting down. She looked at him. Kalechi, she said. In front of everyone, he said. Last day of term, I'll say it properly, so it's on the record." She stared at him. "That's very dramatic," she said. "You pretended to be a maid in my house for 2 weeks," he said. "I think I get to choose the method of response." She was quiet. "Fair," she said finally. He sat back down and opened his laptop. "Can we get back to this problem set?" he said. She looked at him for a moment. Then she opened her notebook. The last day of term. It was a Thursday. The main quadrangle of the university was the gathering point, students milling around after the final exams, the specific atmosphere of people who had been in pressure for weeks and were releasing it simultaneously. The energy was loud and loose and celebratory. Kelechi had told her he needed to show her something near the main hall steps. She went, expecting something low-key, knowing him. He was standing at the top of the steps, with a microphone, borrowed, it would turn out, from the student union. He had arranged this with approximately 30 seconds of social capital and a very straightforward explanation to the student union president about what he needed and why. She stopped at the bottom of the steps. He looked at her. Every student in the quadrangle began to understand that something was happening. "Zara Adamia Mecca," he said, and his voice carried through the microphone to the whole quadrangle. "2 weeks ago, you were in my house as a maid. You made dinner twice. You helped in the garden. You had tea with me in the evening and talked about plants." The quadrangle had gone noticeably quieter. "Before that," he said, "you spent 2 years being my friend, disagreeing with me when I was wrong, working alongside me on things that mattered, being exactly who you are without apologizing for any of it." She was looking at him. Her expression was doing several things at once. "I had something to say to you for 2 years," he said, "and I didn't say it because I wasn't certain of the timing. I am certain now." He came down 4 steps so he was closer. "I love you," he said. "Not what you come from, not what you will inherit, not the name on both sides of your name. I love the person who sat across from me in that analytics class and said you're right and meant it without hesitation and without ego. I love the person who asked the question you needed to ask even though the method was, let's say, unconventional." A ripple of laughter from the crowd around them. "I love the maid," he said. She made a sound. He was almost at the bottom of the steps now. "Whatever you decide," he said, "I wanted it on the record, in front of everyone, so it couldn't be unsaid or unfiled or managed. Real, said out loud, witnessed." The quadrangle was very quiet. She looked at him. He was looking back, the specific look of someone who has said the true thing and is now simply waiting for what the true thing produces. She walked up 2 steps. "You know," she said, "the reason I didn't tell you I loved you for 2 years is because I was afraid you only loved me because of who my family is." "I know," he said. "And then I went to your house as a maid," she said, "and you offered to help cook, both times." "Both times," he confirmed. "And you handed me a cup of tea in the garden," she said. "I did," he said. She was 1 step below him now. "You are a very strange person," she said. "You did a 2-week undercover operation in my house," he said. "Fair," she said. She looked at him. "I love you," she said, clearly, without managing it, in the specific direct way that was her. The quadrangle erupted. He was not a dramatic person. He had not planned anything beyond the speech. But the crowd was very loud and Zara was right there, and the moment had a specific quality that meant he reached out, and she let him, and they were just 2 people standing on some steps in a university quadrangle, while everyone around them did the specific human thing of cheering for something that was real and genuine and completely embarrassing and entirely wonderful. One more part, the part about what they built after. After the steps. They graduated together, she a year behind him, which meant he came back for her ceremony, which was the kind of choice that required no deliberation and which she understood without it being explained. He was building his own investment portfolio, stock market focused, the way his father had built the family wealth, but with the specific advantage of a university finance education and the mentorship of both his father and, increasingly, Chief Emeka Adeyemeka, who had taken a particular interest in Kelechi's financial acumen. Emeka had said to Amara, on a Sunday evening after a family dinner at which Kelechi had made two observations about market positioning that were both precise and original, "That one sees what I used to see." Amara had said, "She chose well." "She tested first," Emeka said. "She tested well," Amara said. Zara ran the Adeyemi business holdings alongside her mother, the inheritance of her grandfather's empire, which had continued to grow under Amara's stewardship, and which was now in its third generation of family management, was not something she received passively. She worked it the way her father had worked everything, with the complete attention of someone who understood that the thing only remains what it is if you apply yourself to it. They married at 25. Small ceremony, she had learned this from her parents, who had learned it from necessity and had kept it from preference. Chief Solomon, 89 now but present, in the front row, said to the person next to him that he had predicted this when the boy was a student and nobody had believed him. He had not predicted it exactly. He had predicted that Kelechi was the kind of person worth knowing, but the specific path was something even he had not foreseen. The two families merged in the specific way that families merge when the joining is genuinely chosen, not without complication, not without the work of two distinct histories learning to make space for each other, but genuinely chosen. Mrs. Ngozi Okafor and Amara Adeyemeka had lunched together the first month after the engagement and discovered they had been reading the same business biography for two different reasons and had the same primary criticism of the subject's decision-making in Chapter 7. Mr. Chukwuma Okafor and Emeka sat across from each other at the first extended family dinner and talked for 3 hours about markets, while everyone else found other things to do, and the conversation showed no sign of ending. Chief Solomon said to Zara, in his 92nd year, in the garden of the house on the hill where everything had begun for her father, "I told your grandfather when he was 15 that he would build something extraordinary. He did. I am telling you now that you will do the same." "How do you know?" she said. He looked at her. "Because," he said, "when you needed to know the truth about something important, you found a way to see it that nobody could prepare for or perform for. That is the most important skill in business and in life. Most people never develop it." She looked at him. "I learned it from my father," she said. "I know," he said. "I taught it to him." She smiled. He smiled. Outside the garden, the city was doing what it always did, moving, building, the specific perpetual energy of a place that was always in the middle of something. Inside the garden, an old man in a chair and a young woman who was the daughter and granddaughter of everything he had built sat together in the late afternoon light. 2 cups of tea on the garden table. Both of them completely themselves. This story started with a boy who had no name and no family and no school and no food. And it ended with a girl in a red power suit, stepping down from steps in a university quadrangle to meet the man who loved her. But what I want to say before we end is this. Everything in between those two moments was built by people who paid complete attention to what mattered. Emeka paid attention to a man getting out of a car in a shopping mall and understood that what he was seeing was a system and not just a man. He paid attention to Chief Solomon across an interview table and negotiated honestly and didn't pretend to want things he didn't want. He paid attention to Amara in a kitchen at 6 in the morning and understood before he had words for it that this was someone different. Amara paid attention to who he was when the gate situation happened. She paid attention every morning in the kitchen. She paid attention to the difference between who he was and who everyone else around her was. And when she was uncertain, she said so to her father and received an honest answer. Zara paid attention to the specific problem of knowing whether what people showed her was real, and she found the most direct possible solution: find the unobserved version, which was extraordinary and slightly insane and completely consistent with everything she had inherited from both parents. Kelechi paid attention to a girl who said "you're right" without hesitation and understood that this was rare. He paid attention to his parents' example of how you treat people who work for you. He paid attention to the fact that his new housekeeper reminded him of someone and almost figured it out before she told him. All of them paid attention. And what you pay attention to over years becomes what you build. The dynasty in this story, the one that went from an orphan boy with no shoes to a woman standing on steps with everyone watching, was built entirely out of specific, sustained, honest attention to what was real. If you are watching this and you are at the beginning of your own story, if you are the boy with the delivery bag or the girl who is trying to figure out who is genuine, pay attention to the right things, to the real things. The mall will arrive, the card will be handed, the kitchen at 6 in the morning will be where it begins. Pay attention. This has been Tribal Tales Hub. If this story moved you, if any part of it was the part you needed today, like this video, one click, that is how you tell us this is what you want more of. Subscribe to Tribal Tales Hub. We are here every single week with a story that stays with you. Hit that bell. Don't miss a single one. Comment below. Tell us which character in this story do you relate to the most: the orphan who built everything, the daughter who tested the truth, or the young man who said it in front of everyone. Tell us. Share this video. Send it to someone who needs to hear that where you start is not where you finish, and that what you build from attention and honesty lasts longer than anything else. This is Tribal Tales Hub. We will see you in the next story.